Якщо на попередній сесії ми це чули так побіжно, ці речі, то зараз це ключовий фокус нашої панельної сесії. І у нас на нашому обговоренні сьогодні кращі спеціалісти в сфері публічної дипломатії, як зі сторони Ізраїлю, так і зі сторони України. Хотів би передусім представити спікера з Ізраїлю. Це Роберт Сінгер, генеральний директор та виконавчий віце-президент Всесвітнього єврейського конгресу. У пана Сінгера та його організації багатющий досвід проєктів, ініціатив для ознайомлення світу з тим, що робить Ізраїль, щодо позиції Ізраїлю з того чи іншого питання. Також до нас згодом приєднається, долучиться Рон Прозор, представник Ізраїлю в ООН в 11 та 15 роках. Тобто у нас буде і позиція урядова, фактично, щодо того, як вести публічну дипломатію, як нею займатися. Пане Сінгер, я буду вдячний, якщо ви виступите, як я зрозумів, з трибуни. І я також хотів представити з українського боку дискусантів. Це Наталія Попович, президент групи компанії One Philosophy, і Василь Мирошниченко, партнер компанії CFC Consulting. Василя я особливо хотів привітати не лише як досвідченого фахівця в сфері публічної дипломатії, але, власне, з днем народження. І дуже дякую, Василе, що в свій день народження ти зміг, знову ж таки, пожертвувати своїм персональним святом на користь країни і на користь Центру Нова Європа. І до нас долучився. Пане Сінгер, вам зараз слово. Будемо вдячні, якщо if you share your experience and of your organization, please.
Thank you. Now, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the room of the President of the Israeli Council of Foreign Relations, Dan Meridor, who used to be the Deputy Prime Minister of Israel. Some of you had an opportunity to hear to him before, and I strongly recommend that you will hear him also at his next session. And my good friend Ron Prozor will join us in a few minutes. I'm coming now from a meeting with your Minister of Education and your Minister of Interior. And being at this conference, I'm still trying to adjust myself because I left the Soviet Union these days, so Ukraine, 46 years ago as a refugee. And and I came back here in 1989. I was one of the people that established the first Israeli embassy here in Ukraine, as well in some other places here in the former Soviet Union. And having met now with your Minister of Education and Minister of Interior, we'll see the Minister of Foreign Affairs tomorrow. I'm really still trying to understand exactly where should I position myself on this regard. And obviously the challenges that you are facing, that we discussed and which is the subject of this afternoon session, are very similar challenges for Israel and for Ukraine. So they asked me to give like 8-9 minutes a presentation of what my organization is doing, the organization that I'm leading professionally. The president of this organization is Ambassador Ronald Lauder from New York, and I'm the CEO of the World Jewish Congress. So I grew up about 500 kilometers away from here in southwestern Ukraine, in Bukovina, in the historic city of Chernivtsi that some of you probably visited. The city which was once called Little Vienna. I don't see Beryl Rodal here, but he is one of the organizers of this conference, but he obviously has very close contacts to the city as well. Before the war, the population of Chernivtsi was about 1/3 Jewish. And by the way, the population of Kiev wasn't far away from this. It also was almost 1/3 Jewish. In Chernivtsi, they used to have 85 synagogues, and the city was a world-famous hub of Jewish culture. However, by the time I came into the world, after the Holocaust, the Jewish population was much smaller. But Chernivtsi was still one of the only Soviet cities in which Yiddish could be heard on the streets. Anti-Semitism was a part of our landscape, though it was perhaps less problematic than in other Ukrainian cities. Israel, the Jewish state, was an object of constant attack in the Soviet media and in the Soviet schools. The teaching of Hebrew or any sort of Jewish education was outlawed. Israel, we were told, was an aggressive, imperialist state, a puppet of the Americans. Some of the older folks here may remember Trofim Kichko's notorious creed, Judaism без прикрас, Judaism without embellishment, published in 1963 by the Ukrainian Academy of Science. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, famously said, "Anyone who does not believe in miracles is not a realist." He was referring, of course, to Israel, but his observation also applies to Ukraine. Much has changed in the last 30 years, and the birth of a vibrant, independent, and democratic Ukraine with a flourishing Jewish community and institutions is just one uplifting example. We in Israel and the Jewish communities worldwide are grateful to the Ukrainian governments over the last 3 decades for helping make that possible. And we're also gratified by the friendly bilateral relations between Israel and Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian-born Jews in Israel helped to cultivate these ties. And I'm glad that flights from Tel Aviv to Kiev, Kharkiv, Lviv, Odessa, Dnipro, and other Ukrainian cities are completely full. I couldn't get actually a ticket to get here yesterday. And it was 2 flights, one after the other, with a half an hour difference. Today, both Jews and Ukrainians can celebrate the fact that so many of the most outstanding figures in the Israeli history were born in your country, in Ukraine. Just a few blocks from here, Golda Meir, Israel's first female prime minister, was born. Vladimir Zhabotinsky, one of our greatest leaders and a devoted friend of the Ukrainian cause, hailed from Odessa. Our greatest Hebrew writer, Shmuel Agnon, was born and raised in Buchach, near Ternopoli. Even the current Speaker of the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein, hails from my hometown, Chernivtsi. Sadly, however, some things do remain constant. One of them is anti-Semitism. Even if its focus has shifted to some extent from the former Soviet Union countries to Western Europe. Today, around the world, hatred of Jews is often camouflages as a hatred for Israel. The Jewish people are denied what almost every nation is accorded, the right to national self-determination. Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism, was a visionary, but he was wrong in one of his predictions. He believed that hatred toward Jews would largely disappear with the birth of the Jewish state. He could not have imagined that Israel would become a lightning rod for those who hate Jews. Many Jewish communities around the world are now experiencing a sharp increase in anti-Semitism, which often manifests itself as a hatred for Israel. In this part of the world, we see a disturbing campaign to deny the Holocaust, to call perpetrators victims, and to glorify local collaborators who are hailed as national heroes. Today, Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, has become the target of ridiculous charges, many of which are not less absurd than those I heard as a child growing up in the Soviet Union. Some of these accusations can be described as modern-day blood libels. Let me be clear. Merely criticizing Israel is not delegitimization, but denying its right to exist as a Jewish country, judging it by standards that no normal country could uphold, and blaming it for all the ills in the Middle East is. The World Jewish Congress, the organization that I lead professionally, is the umbrella organization of 103 Jewish communities worldwide. Each community elects a president, who then automatically becomes a stakeholder and our board member. Your country is represented by the Jewish Confederation of Ukraine, which is led by Boris Loshkin, whom I'm sure many of you know, and VAD, which is led by philanthropist Andrei Adamovsky. For years, the WGC has been in the forefront of the struggle to combat the phenomena I just laid out before. The reason I'm here today is to share our experiences in setting the record straight about Israel and explain how we combat the campaigns of disinformation that affect the Jewish state. And after the 2 meetings I just had, I think it's very relevant for this public. We have built units dedicated to combating anti-Semitism and the legitimization of the State of Israel. And we are continuing to develop existing programs and activities that engage all generations and officials at all levels. Our main focuses are reforming the international institutions that seem to find any reason to condemn Israel, while ignoring those who seek to harm it politically, economically, and militarily, and to provide the younger generation of Jews around the world with the tools they need to grow into strong advocates for Israel. Our strategy combines diplomacy, activism, and publicity. Diplomacy is our primary activity. We are often described as the foreign minister of the Jewish people or its diplomatic arm. And the State of Israel knows that we stand ready to help defend it. As such, we have made a commitment and concerted effort to establish or deepen close working relationship with national political leaders in more than 60 countries, as well as the key figures at leading international institutions. This process hasn't been easy, and to do so, we have created a professional organization that would be the envy of most of the foreign ministries. We have built a strong relationship with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, fostered close ties with UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay, and work closely with top professionals in nearly every international organization. In addition, I visit Geneva at least twice a year in order to meet with delegations to the United Nations Human Rights Council. With all the human rights abusers in the world, including Syria, North Korea, Iran, and many others, more resolutions have been passed against Israel than all other countries combined. I would like to show you the most recent statement delivered to the Human Rights Council by one of our representatives in Geneva, Lauren Rose, just to give you an example, a short example of what we are doing.
For the violence and bloodshed on the Israeli Gaza. We must the impartial statements made over the past few days and the one-sided resolution presented this morning. We are at a loss as to how the violence that has erupted can be condemned by the OHCHR and several UN human rights bodies without mention of Hamas's role in instigating the violent demonstrations. The statements completely ignore the incitement by Hamas, who deliberately pushed civilians to charge toward the border into the path of fire, and the hatred fueled by these terrorist organizations against Israeli civilians. Moreover, they failed to address Hamas's own claims that 50 of those that died in the process were in fact terrorists. During the riots, protesters burned tires, waved Nazi symbols, threw rocks and explosives, sent burning kites to ignite the nearby Israeli fields, and ripped away at the border fence to infiltrate Israel. We therefore fail to see how these demonstrations can be labeled as peaceful. On the contrary, the right of Palestinian citizens to protest peacefully has been hijacked by a terrorist group devoted to inflicting suffering regardless of the costs. We reiterate the World Jewish Congress President Ronald S. Lauder's statement urging the international community to call for calm and to ensure that the facts on the situation are disseminated widely and accurately. We call on all member states to reject this resolution. Thank you.
We also find the strengthening and supporting the leaders of tomorrow is vital, and I'm happy that there are so many young people here in the room to ensure the strong future for both the Jewish people and the Jewish state. For the past several years, we have made a commitment to developing the next generation of Jewish community leaders through our Jewish diplomatic corps. They too support our diplomatic efforts. We have about 250 of them. Most of them are graduated from different Ivy League universities, professors at the universities, international lawyers, business people from some 40 different countries. These young leaders have delivered only this year 64 statements like the one you saw now to the UN Human Rights Council, and in the past year have authored more than 32 op-eds in major publications from New York Times and different newspapers. One of our most significant developments in recent years has been the establishment of our counter-delegitimization unit and a robust social media and public relations department to support the work we carry on. In fact, much of our public relations work in support of Israel is based on social and other digital media channels. In the modern world, cyberspace must be seen as the theater of battle. Computer geeks are almost as important as shock troops or fighter pilots. Some would say they are more so. Last year, our social media reached 180 million individuals around the world with content distributed in more than 20 languages. One of the campaigns, for example, we ran, campaign of Remembrance of the Holocaust, reached 650 million people, every 11th person on the earth. Now we have created what we call the Digital Ambassadors Club, a one-stop shop for news and action with the express purpose of countering disinformation campaigns. More than 30,000 people are active online on a daily basis. That is just a small part of what we do. Like the Jews, the Ukrainian people have a huge overseas diaspora. There are vast numbers of your countrymen in Canada, the United States, Brazil, Poland, Germany, and many other countries, obviously in this area as well. We are happy to share with you our experience that draws our communities together. As any other nation, Ukraine should see its diaspora overseas as an important asset. There are potential ambassadors who can help the world better understand Ukraine. As a native of this country, I'm especially excited by the development of a democratic Ukraine based on the Western values to which every society should be committed: mutual respect, diversity of opinion, and tolerance. Thank you.
Дуже дякую, пане Сінгер. Хотів би звернутися до дискусантів наших шановних. Пані Наталю, що б ви могли сказати з досвіду Ізраїлю, що для України може бути корисним? Ми пригадуємо, коли почалася російська агресія, скільки Україні доводилося докладати зусиль і доводиться і досі для протидії дискредитації насамперед на міжнародній арені. І ми частково бачимо, що, можливо, Україна була не в такій ворожій атмосфері, як Ізраїль. Якщо зважити на те, що більшість резолюцій в ООН приймаються чи готуються більше проти Ізраїлю, ніж сумарно проти всіх країн, на щастя, в ООН, принаймні, підтримка України є. Де насправді Україна може похвалитися своїми здобутками, які цікаві є проекти, тим більше, що ви є одним з співзасновником українського антикризового медіа-центру. Можливо, ще є якісь речі, які теж можуть бути цікаві нашим партнерам із Ізраїлю. Тому от цікаво, що може бути з Ізраїлю для України цікавим, що ви могли вихопити вже за півдня участі в конференції, і чим можна поділитися із ізраїльською стороною України. Дякую.
Дякую дуже. Чи краще, якщо я буду говорити українською чи англійською? Окей. Я би на початку вітаю. Дуже дякую за запрошення і за можливість почути наших вельмишановних колег з Ізраїлю і трошки порефлексувати над українським досвідом. Я, напевно, передовсім хотіла би сказати про мій контакт з цією цікавою країною, в якої я надихаюсь багато і продовжую вчитись останні роки особливо. Знаєте, ми всі виростаємо з якимись історіями в нашому житті. І ці історії, з якими ми виростаємо, вони є дуже важливими, вони є формуючими. Я виростала у Львові, в родині, яка мешкала перед війною в Варшаві до Другої світової війни. Тому в моїй родині передавалися історії моєї бабусі і дідуся, які приятелювали близько Варшаві з багатьма єврейськими родинами. Дуже переживали, коли їх застала трагедія, і багато з них, на жаль, потім опинилися в Варшавському гетто. Я пам'ятаю історії про Андрея Шептицького, який був таким якби superior для мого прадіда, який також був греко-католицьким священником. І ми знаємо про багато історій з минулого, коли вдалося, на жаль, надто малу кількість єврейських дітей врятувати в українських монастирях. Це історії з минулого. історії сучасності Ізраїлем я зіштовхнулася, коли була в ролі радника до Бориса Лошкіна, який зараз очолює єврейську конфедерацію віднедавна. Борис в той час очолював президентську адміністрацію в Україні і запросив мене на зустріч з Ерезом Ешелем, який стартував в Ізраїлі проект Українських академій лідерства. Коли я прийшла на зустріч з Ересом і почула про його проект, де молоді люди через такий gap year, коли їм по 18-19 років в Ізраїлі готуються до служби в армії, а в Україні мені видавалося, що після Майдану це саме така лідерська підготовка, якої дуже потребує українське суспільство. Я дуже рада, що так склалася історія, що зараз ми вже маємо біля 200 студентів, які не тільки вчаться лідерству і переймають найкращі моделі цієї освіти з боку Ізраїлю, але також є публічними дипломатами, тому що вони виконують дуже важливу роль в промоційних таких активностях України за кордоном. Зокрема, коли Голландія приймала рішення в рамках референдуму про угоду асоціації з Україною, студенти дуже допомагали мені, моїм колегам, Василеві і всьому Українському кризовому медіа-центру і багатьом тут присутнім учасникам відстоювати позицію України в Голландії. Тому це дуже цікавий і насичений такий досвід. Мені здається, що є 3 важливих уроки з боку Ізраїлю по відношенню до України. Перший – це насправді сама історія зіонізму. Мені здається, що усвідомити, що навіть народ, який дуже-дуже постраждав, може бути дуже-дуже успішним і самодостатнім, мені здається, в цьому полягає найбільша така обіцянка, найбільший промис, найбільша можливість для України. Точно так само, як євреї дуже довго відчували, що не зможуть стати рівноправними учасниками, аж поки інші нації і країни будуть вказувати їм на їх місце, чи то в Європі, чи то в суспільстві, чи то в якихось ієрархіях. Точно так само ми, як українці, і фактично тільки після Революції Гідності, мабуть, усвідомили, що ми не готові жити в світі, в якому Росія ставиться до України як до тимчасового утворення, або ставиться до українців як до неіснуючого народу і неіснуючої нації. І, напевно, на жаль, ця війна на Сході не припиниться до тої міри і до того часу, коли Росія не визнає, що Україна тут є назавжди. І українці будуть суверенною країною, суверенним народом, який завжди буде захищати і до кінця свої права. Тому мені здається, що в цьому для українців з точки зору усвідомлення сили є дуже великий урок. Другий урок, мені здається, який також до нього поверталися і про нього частково згадували спікери в першій панелі, це величезне усвідомлення, те, яке я побачила, знайомлячись з дуже багатьма людьми в Ізраїлі в рамках таких ознайомчих поїздок, коли ми створювали Академію лідерства в Україні на основі ізраїльського досвіду. Там, спілкуючись з людьми, ти розумієш, що ти бачиш людей, які справді формують щодня свій характер, живучи в майже постійній загрозі, але отримуючи певне задоволення від того, щоб англійською це такий defy reality, так? І постійно винаходячи в собі ресурси, інновації, інвентивність, аби залишатися успішними і мати задоволення від цього досвіду, такої startup nation. Мені здається, що це той досвід, знову ж таки, який зараз український, напевно, творчий клас і український IT-клас захищає не тільки в Україні, створюючи цю індустрію і десь будучи успішними в ній, але й за кордоном, тому що ми починаємо бачити більше наших представників і більше компаній, які себе реалізують і таким чином в дуже творчий спосіб представляють Україну на міжнародній арені. Третій, напевно, важливий урок, найважливіший, можливо, це те, що Ізраїль зрозумів, аби бути успішними, треба дбати про найслабшу ланку. І треба дуже дбати про людей. Ці питання інфраструктури, охорони здоров'я, освіти, які є в Ізраїлі, які допомагають їм продовжувати залучати людей, які хочуть приїхати і стати частиною історії успіху Ізраїлю. Це, мабуть, те, що нам буде достатньо складно, попри існуючу війну з Росією, збудувати, але неможливо, якщо це вдасться зробити в Україні. Тут якраз про те, аби поставити людину в центр уваги роботи уряду. Тут про те, аби кожен український солдат відчував, що за ним держава буде стояти так, як стоїть за кожним ізраїльським солдатом ізраїльський уряд, коли відбуваються ці славнозвісні обміни полонених на одну фактично одиницю, один талант одного громадянина і інші речі. Мені здається, що в цьому ми вже дуже багато речей почали переймати на рівні інформаційної державної політики в Ізраїлю, досвіду стосовно того, як відзначати тих воїнів, які кладуть своє життя зараз за нашу безпеку. З якою повагою ми маємо ще більше і більше ставитися до сиріт, які залишаються після них, до їх родин, до системи освіти, яка має виховувати максимальну повагу і розуміння, і інклюзію по відношенню до тих людей, яким ми завдячуємо всім. З точки зору, напевно, публічної такої міжнародної дипломатії, кілька ще таких стверджуючих речей, які мені дуже імпонують, і які, мені здається, ми в роботі Українського кризового медіа-центру намагалися останні 4 роки втілювати. По-перше, в Ізраїлі є така дуже здорова річ, яка говорить про те, що не треба вибачатися за те, що є твоїм. Мені здається, що дуже важливо мати своє власне усвідомлення історії, не намагатися її прожити, і це те, що зараз робить Україна дуже-дуже активно останні 4 роки. Справді, як вранці говорила наша колега і також член правління УКМЦ Іванка Климпуш, знати, за що ти хочеш попросити пробачення і за що ти вибачаєш. І такі речі, як навіть ви знаєте, що ми зараз зовсім по-іншому відзначаємо Другу світову війну. Україна відійшла від глорифікації такого радянського усвідомлення Другої світової війни і про життя її як великої трагедії, з якої ми і далі продовжуємо виносити певні для себе уроки. Але разом з тим усвідомлювати і пишатися тими речами, які в нас є. Мені здається, другий момент в такому публічному просторі – це те, що ізраїльські спікери дуже впевнено і наполегливо і завжди до кінця захищають інтерес своєї країни. Мені здається, що це те, чому ми вчимося. Єдине, що в Україні, як завжди, як правило, дуже багато голосів. Тобто ми часто чуємо від наших дипломатів, що з боку країни приїжджають сотні спікерів, часто з достатньо різними меседжами. Мені здається, що з боку Ізраїля приїжджають, коли 200 людей, вони всі приблизно говорять про одне і те саме. В українців присутня варіація точки зору, і це трошечки може впливати на нашу ефективність в міжнародних відносинах і в дипломатії. Але що важливо є, і що, мені здається, ми робимо, і тут, напевно, багато ще є точок навчання між нами, і як це Ізраїль робить по відношенню до своїх діаспорних організацій. Я знаю, що паралельно з нами відбувається зараз сесія якраз на цю тему. Це використання сили громадянського суспільства і тих громадських організацій, і тих експертів, які часом, навіть поки українська держава формується, і, скажімо, credibility і повага до українських органів влади за кордоном ще тільки напрацьовуються, до громадянського суспільства, до експертів є великий кредит довіри. І ми намагаємося останні 4 роки, я, Василь, мої інші колеги з УКМЦ, максимально його використовувати для того, щоб захистити інтерес України. Зокрема, одне з таких напрацювань, якими ми ділимося вже з нашими європейськими колегами. Група аналізу гібридних загроз Українського кризового медіа-центру зробила таке фундаментальне дослідження того, як російська офіційна лінія телебачення висвітлює європейські країни. Як багато, на жаль, ненависті, непорозуміння і такої невзаємності до дуже теплого ставлення, яке є в Європі по відношенню до Росії, демонструється в Росії. Ми з цим дослідженням об'їздили, я думаю, вже біля 10 країн, і про нього написали вже і Washington Post, і The Daily Mail, і The Guardian, і Le Monde, і інші видання. І це вже, скажімо, такий наша цінність, наш value add нашим європейським партнерам, яким ми допомагаємо десь відкрити очі, десь побачити якісь загрози і трошки по-іншому подивитися на ті виклики, які стоять перед ними. Але це постійний процес. Ми також десь помиляємося, десь робимо, десь аналізуємо вже свій досвід, але постійно також звертаємося до того, що ми бачимо з боку наших колег і Ізраїлю, і намагаємося це враховувати в нашій роботі. Так що ми дуже дякуємо їм за приклад і за натхнення.
Дуже дякую, Наталю, особливо за ваш досвід уже використання ізраїльського досвіду. Особливо цікаво, і сподіваємося, що почуєте і почули нові якісь цікаві ідеї, які ми зможете в подальшому скористатися. Василю, у вас є величезний досвід не лише в протидії російській дезінформаційній кампанії, але досвід і в брендуванні України за кордоном задовго до і російської агресії. Було б цікаво, щоб ви поділилися теж ось якраз не лише з протидією фейковим кампаніям проти України, але також, як здається, ця позитивна брендова адженда на користь України. І тут я хотів би теж зробити такий реверанс Ізраїлю в українському дискурсі, тому що ми 2 роки тому проводили опитування серед українців, і питання звучало таким чином: зовнішня політика якої країни має стати прикладом для України? Для нас було дивно побачити деякі країни, бо, звичайно, там потрапили Сполучені Штати, Німеччина, Велика Британія, але потрапив також і Ізраїль. Потрапив Ізраїль, що особливо цікаво. На жаль, ми не можемо припустити, що саме приваблює українців, бо не було б додаткових запитань, але очевидно, ось ця якраз здатність, оцей резилієнс до стійкості і до загроз, які існують навколо Ізраїлю. Це те, чого, можливо, українці не відчувають у себе і що хотіли перейняти. Якраз, можливо, помиляюся, але насамперед щодо брендування України за кордоном, ну і що може бути корисним зі сторони Ізраїлю. Василю, дякую.
Thank you, Sergey. I will just speak English for a change so that our guests can better follow that discussion in a way. And basically, very good questions that are being raised. And also, I enjoyed hearing, Robert, your presentation about how Israel has been harnessing the diaspora, and apparently you all were united by the fact of actually resurrecting the state of Israel, and that was a strong motivation. And to this extent, also Ukrainian diaspora in the Soviet times, especially in North America, they all were driven by the desire to have an independent Ukraine, and they were pretty mobilized. But then after the 90s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when we achieved, or when they achieved what they wanted, there was, in a way, they felt like now it's up to Ukrainians to decide what we do, how we achieve that. And then later we actually had another wave, that was the recent revolution of dignity, and then the forthcoming Russian aggression in Ukraine, which became an impetus for the mobilization of the diaspora. Nevertheless, I believe that your experience of dealing with diaspora is something we could replicate and something we could really build on, because I really do believe that what you have described, or how you are cultivating and actually educating the younger generation of Israelis as well as of Jewish people living abroad, who can be your advocates, who can go out and speak on your behalf at different venues, at different conferences. This is so important, because now what we are facing in the public diplomacy world, we see the devolution of diplomacy. And the devolution of diplomacy means that it becomes more and more citizen-to-citizen diplomacy, where actually individuals can have an impact on foreign policy. Let me give you just today's example. Dennis Rodman, an NBA player, legendary NBA player, his contribution to the North Korea peace not the peace, basically the meeting, the legendary historic meeting which took place this morning in Singapore, is invaluable. So one individual, a basketball player, could have contributed to something which could not be achieved for such a long period of time. This is just one of the examples. But I believe that today's in the world of social media, citizens and actually our applications, our cell phone that we can use for whatever can really make a change and really make a difference. So this is, by the way, the equivalent, your counterpart is the Ukrainian World Congress, who we know really well. And they are pretty active, and they also traveling the world, meeting different leaders. And we have over 20 million Ukrainians living abroad, and definitely this is where we are now active and try to be as active as possible. For better or for worse, all these people are united because of, against Vladimir Putin, and actually because of the threat we have to face today. And in a way, I always often quote Golda Meir, we also reference to, because there was a famous quote, I don't remember it clearly, but there was actually you know, when we still have to negotiate, right, with your enemy. But the fact is, when your enemy does not recognize you as a nation, does not recognize you in itself that you should exist, I mean, there is no space for negotiation, right? So in a way, what we are facing with Russia is that they don't really recognize as a sovereign nation, basically. And therefore, it's so difficult to actually reach any kind of settlement with Russia, because for them, it's inherently, we don't exist. I mean, we just don't exist. So that's the problem. Now, speaking of public diplomacy, and actually why it's so important to communicate a good image and a good story about the country. Apparently, we all are competing, right? All the countries are vying between each other for foreign direct investment, for tourism, for actual attractiveness of its export. And apparently, Ukraine is out there, and we want to be differentiated, we want to be different. And yeah, I think what I really like about Israel, about how the country which is constantly at war with your neighbors, and it's constantly fighting, has managed to build a successful brand of an IT nation, of a software development nation, of an innovation technology. This is something that we would be keen on actually replicating here. As you know, we have two sectors now in Ukraine which are developing very quickly. This is IT and agriculture. And with respect to IT, especially blockchain technology and other developments, this is where we would like to see more Israeli investment now that could help us deliver that message. That despite all the wars, despite all the sort of negative trends we see generally in the economy, you know, which we all know about, lack of rule of law, corruption, et cetera, there are still plenty of opportunities, and it's all changing here. So I think Israeli experience will be here very valuable. And going back to self-power and sort of my experience, there was a question from Serhii. It's interesting because my company initially, when we set up 16 years ago, we set up as a public affairs shop, basically, advising on government relations. But we had one idea. We all believed that we have to do something to change the image of the country. And in those days, my business partner, who unfortunately could not join this panel, Gennady Kuruchka, he came up with an idea of getting Ukraine into the Eurovision Song Contest. And his idea was very simple. We knew nothing about music. We thought, okay, if we get in, we can win. If we can win, we can host it, right? Once we can host it, we can tell the world who we are. And it took us 2 years, basically, to do it. And we advised a Ukrainian singer in 2004. And then we hosted the Eurovision in 2005. And that was a phenomenal breakthrough for us internationally, because apart from visas being lifted to the Europeans, apart from actually all of a sudden Ukraine sort of emerged on the map, and the audience of Eurovision is 200 million people. And now, by the way, that Israel won. I was in Lisbon, by the way. I cheered for your entry. I watched it, the semifinals, and I said, Israel's going to win, because it so stands out from the crowd. And I think it was a good gift for you on the 70th anniversary. And I believe that even such events, by the way, last year when we hosted the Eurovision, again, it was even more important for us last year, because the song that won, the Crimean Tatar song, was so important because it was the message we're sending. And I think it's also, in a way, symbolic for Israel as well. Right, what else? Look, what I really liked about what you said, it was the feeling of patriotism within among young people, right? I think this is something that we still lack here. And by the way, the project that Natalia has been developing here, called Ukrainian Leadership Academy, based on the Israeli experience, is a very good example of how we can bring up the next generations of Ukrainians who would be patriotic, who would know their history. And I think history is very important in this respect. I see many professors of history here in the audience. I think sometimes we just don't know our history. It's important to know the history really well to be able to communicate Ukraine better. Because there are, of course, different parts of histories, and we have to know it to be able to explain it, to be able to explain who we are and why we are so different from all the rest. But again, for us, for Ukraine today, public diplomacy is a matter of survival, because public diplomacy and communication done by the government, by the civil society, by all different actors, as well as philanthropists and all others who are involved, is so important, because we are now, fighting a major war, and we have to communicate our point of view. But apparently what we really need is actually to become stronger in economic wise, because at the end of the day, the biggest threat for the dictatorial regime next door is that we are successful as a nation and as a successful in this particular respect, that our standards of living exceed than that of Russia, that we become a normal European country with foreign direct investment, which will be at a higher level, which have many new jobs, with good, interesting entrepreneurs on the market, which become international brands, and we see them coming. And this is what's going to make us stronger. And I believe that your case of Israel is something that we always we're also passionate about. And by the way, everybody was sharing their own stories about connections to Israel or Jewish communities. I have my own as well. So I'll finish with that one to sort of as a cherry pick. I come from a little shtetl called Volochesk, which is on the river's Bruch, Khmelnytskyi Oblast. I grew up there, my parents live there. And I didn't know much about the history of the town until I came to Kyiv, actually. And a friend of mine who became my friend was the press secretary at the US Embassy. His name is Ken Moskowitz. He reached out to me when I was a first-year student, and he said, look, my great-grandparents used to live in that little town there, and I want to go there and visit. And then he came over, and all of a sudden I learned the history of that town where I grew up. It turned out, it used to be out of 12,000 people, 8,000 were Jews there before the World War I. So it was a massive history which I was never aware of. And for me, it was a revelation, and I became so interested in the topic. And then actually, later on, I got a project as a student, which was commissioned to me by a judge from New Jersey. Her great-parents, actually her parents, were corresponding on the daily basis for 5 years, and the correspondence was in Russian and Yiddish. And she asked me, can I translate those letters, like really 5 years of letters on a daily basis? And I got a team of my friends who were translating those letters. I actually ended up finding a person who really could speak Yiddish as well, and that was a 2-year project for me. With the money earned, I had my big wedding party, and that was a great sort of story to finish that. But anyways, I think I'll just finish here and then look forward to further discussion.
Дуже дякую, Василю. І зараз хотів би надати слово нашому ще одному спікеру з Ізраїля, Рону Прозору, який має справді унікальний досвід і дипломатичний, і в академічній сфері. І буду б дуже вдячний пану Прозору за те, щоб він поділився якраз своїм, можливо, персональним досвідом і досвідом Ізраїлю як країни в цілому.
Yes. First of all, it's a joy to be here. You look like a much nicer crowd than the one I saw at the United Nations. I'll try and capsulize for you. In essence, after, I grew up in the foreign ministry, so I started as a second secretary, the lowest form of animal life. Second secretary, first secretary. Bottom line, what I want to tell you is that I ran Israel's foreign service. That's where I lost most of my hair. But when I came to New York, to the UN, I myself was shocked at what happens against Israel, and I would, tag it as against Israel. What we see is political terror. Political terror on nearly every dimension. Now, I'll have to substantiate this statement, okay? What does it mean? It means that on all levels against the state of Israel, by the Palestinians, by the Arabs, they don't care about what the case is. It doesn't make a difference if it's about liabilities, if about sustainable development, if it's about, anything that is, things that Israel wants to do in Africa. The fact that Israel suggests something automatically creates a situation where they not just work against it, but vehemently go after the state of Israel. Now I'll give you examples. Examples are wonderful. Here it's all quiet, and the ones in Israel know the Mediterranean is calm. You don't know that anything is happening, and suddenly
out of the water comes a decision by an undersecretary called Laila Zarougi. Now, what does it mean? At the UN, you have different people who are responsible for different agencies, okay? And they are basically quite independent. So Laila Zarougi, Algerian, she is responsible for dealing with children in armed conflict. Now, out of this quite suddenly, she puts a report out. It's supposed to be a professional report, okay? That says the following, that Israel kills Palestinian children in a systematic, widespread, and institutionalized manner. Now, why do I remember those three words? Not because I became very interested in the English language, but because those three words constitute a move to crimes against humanity, ICC. You don't use those words for what's happening in Syria, or in Yemen, or in Libya. Never were those three words used together. Who organized the report? Hamasniks. But now, hop, the report is there. She wants to blacklist Israel and, of course, ICC. So we have something that happens. To tell you the story, what happened, I went to Ban Ki-moon, who was then the Secretary General. By the way, Ban Ki-moon, when he was put in an MRI machine, an X-ray machine, the result came out spineless. Went over to Samantha Power, the American ambassador, had the Prime Minister call Obama, and we managed, after a while, to really take this off the stand. But it shows you something that is done in an institutionalized and structural manner. Now, to take it, to bring it home to you on things that not necessarily connect to what Israel does, okay? Israel is part of the West European and Others group. It's a very nice country club. What is this country club? All Western European countries, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Israel. We are the others. Until the year 2000, Israel is not part of any group. Why? Kacha. You know what kacha means? Kacha, Robert? Kacha. Kacha. That's it. We're not part. They don't want us. 2000, Richard Holbrooke, Israel is becoming part of the West European and Others group in New York. But the UN has 4 centers in the world: New York, Geneva, Vienna, and Nairobi. In all the other parts of the UN, we are not part of WIOG. Lama? Kacha. Now you're learning the word kacha. I go to the British ambassador. I always love to go to British ambassadors. First, I was Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom. The Queen is still not recovered from my departure. And I go to the British ambassador because they have a knighthood before their name. Sir Mark Lyle Grant. Hey, Mark, why are you singling us out in this situation? No answer. In the Council on Human Rights, there's an Article 4 that deals with human rights violations all over the world. An Article 7 that singles out only one country in the world. Surprise, surprise, what country? Israel. Lama? Kacha. Who votes against this? 4 countries vote against this singling out of Israel. The United States, Canada, Israel, and the great empire of Palau. After the vote, I looked for the ambassador of Palau. I asked Robert, maybe he knows where the guy is. I looked for him, found him on a 15-story building in New York. Knocked on the door and said, Ambassador, I came to say thank you. He said, I'm ambassador for Palau for 8 years. No one ever said thank you. But the Brits, the French, the Europeans, all abstain. Why are you abstaining? Kacha. So the point that I want to say is, how do you deal with this, okay? And my way of dealing with it was to fight everything on each inch. And when I say counter-terrorism, because there's political terror against Israel, it has to be on all dimensions. On especially media, Facebook, do demonstrations, we now had Messi. Messi, Argentina, did you hear the story that the Argentinian soccer team did not come with Messi to visit Israel? That was the case. We called it a Messi business. How do you counter it? You counter it by doing stuff on the, we call the third civilian parts of Israel's population. We have it at the IDC. You fight them on, you know, on all networks outside of the public domain, because governments are always looked upon as very biased. Demonstrate against coming, we have to have a counter demonstration. We have to work on the system and basically go after the people that go after us. And what am I really suggesting? In other words, Israel, as you know, works very well when it deals with terror that happens all around. We have good information and intelligence that we gather. We can do the same thing on all those people that go after us in the public domain. And it's a lot of work, but it has to change the way we think. So in essence, I can go on and tell you a lot of stories, but I think for 7 minutes, thank you.
Thank you a lot. Дуже дякую. Дуже дякую, шановні спікери, дискусанти. Зараз настала черга для запитань, коментарів із аудиторії. Будь ласка.
Дякую, Ігор Скрипченко. Хотів задати питання, оскільки у нас назва дискусії «Протидія дезінформації та створення бренду держави за кордоном». Я не знаю, наші гості чули, мабуть, чули працю з Бабченко. Моє питання стосується того, чи проводилася в Ізраїлі колись саме ізраїльськими спецслужбами така спецоперація, саме з ініціювання вбивства, але саме коли було повідомлено про це всі ізраїльські ЗМІ. Тобто спочатку всі дізналися про вбивство, а потім, що якби це була спецоперація. Чи була саме в медійному плані колись така спецоперація, проведена ізраїльськими спецслужбами за всю історію Ізраїлю? Дякую.
I hope I understood the question well. You're not, I didn't...
So do you know about this incident, Babchenko incident, and he was...
He drowned.
So he was a kind of being killed, but yes. Realistically he wasn't, and the government, Ukrainian officials kept silence for a day, and the question was, is it normal for Israeli government, as I understand, and special forces to keep the secret, not making it public?
If it would be Israel, he wouldn't appear again. No, I'm joking. But this is, first of all, it's odd in the sense, but what I'm saying, you asked me a question, and the answer to that is that we have to be creative. We have to be creative in dealing with basically people and countries that are, all they think about is really creating a change in Israel's society, in trying to influence public opinion, and in order to create fear, and also in addition to that, by economic pressure, to really create a warfare against Israel. So I would call it a diplomatic warfare, and like I said, it's like political terror. And the minute you go out and do that, you have to be, to understand that there might be consequences for your behavior. Today, it's a free zone.
I think it goes goes back to what we discussed before. Ambassador Prozor is probably the best Israeli diplomats, at least those that I know in the last 20 years, working for the foreign ministry and representing Israel on the diplomatic scene up till recently. And the question is that really was raised here before I came in is there a devolution of diplomacy or is there more importance for public diplomacy or using the diplomacy of using social media and being called what Ron just called being more creative. As important as this panel is and the most brilliant people that you have here in the Ukrainian public opinion agencies, what is more important is what's happening here, and I see many people sitting with the phones and sending tweets and sending, after leaving this room, probably will place it on the Facebook, and I see that it's live streamed, and so we're here in this room, 50 people, and through this, obviously, you get to thousands. And the question is really, since we started talking about this, what is the role of public diplomacy today in the life of a country like Ukraine, and how it may or have changed your image worldwide? On this, Ron and I, you have two Jewish people, you probably have five different opinions. We have some disagreements on this issue. So I'm representing now an NGO, or big international Jewish organization. I probably saw in the last 10 days more ambassadors and foreign ministers and prime ministers and different ministers. Just they told you, just came from a meeting with the Minister of Education and the Minister of Interior, than many of the Israeli top diplomats. The diplomatic corps doesn't always like this, because I'm not representing the state of Israel, I'm representing the Jewish community, and hopefully we are working together in a good coordination, which in most of the cases we do. But once again, when I'm speaking on behalf of the Jewish people. When I'm coming to see your Minister of Interior, I'm raising first of all the issues of anti-Semitism, of Holocaust memory, of Holocaust education, and then I'm going to the issues of voting for Israel in different international institutions, or Iran, or any other issues that are related to Israel. So from this point of view, what I think is two things. One, I think that the title of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, I would change it, because I think you spoke about this. I think that you really have to build on a positive and on the achievements of your country, and I think you have many. It's a huge country. You have very talented people here. You have many achievements, and all people here. And I'm telling you because I'm traveling all the time. I'm seeing your ambassadors in different countries, and every discussion goes on to the war with Russia and to trying to kind of to be the underdog of the region. And I think you should switch it. You spoke about Israel as a startup nation. You spoke about the achievements that Ukraine, once again, I don't know enough about this, but you spoke about the achievements of Ukraine in agriculture, in IT, in different areas, and I would go really to this direction. You have 20 million people, Ukrainian diaspora. I think it's more, because it's 20 million people who actually were born in Ukraine, but there are many of their kids, and I visited many of the Ukrainian language schools in Canada, and I did work in the past with World Ukrainian Congress, and I think that different minorities congresses, and Ron used to do it when he was ambassador both in the UK and in the United States, and he used to work also with the different minorities, with the Armenians, for the Armenian community, for example, in the United States, and many others. So you have to find partners. In this world, you have to find partners. You can't fight by yourself, and you have to find partners with some common interest. Now, the other thing is, which is I see is happening here from time to time, and I hope it's not going to go too far. The solution is not to rewrite the history. There are some very bright spots in the history of the Ukrainian people. There are some dark spots, and the idea is not to rewrite the history and to present that things didn't happen here. The idea is really to focus, to give the solid information. We just discussed about this. To give solid information if there is a neo-Nazi march today in Kiev, which really damages, in Odessa, which really damages the image of Ukraine by saying that it never happened. You gain nothing. So there are many other things that should be done in this respect. And the last thing is, both of you spoke about this, is the engagement. The engagement of people, and Rod is running now a big center in one of the Israeli colleges in Herzliya. We are running, really, as I said, 30,000 active volunteers who are doing it on a daily basis. You have to engage people in this process. We have what we call a rapid response team, which really is divided to different groups. So whatever is happening related to Israel, and I'm sure that they're having something similar in Herzliya, in Israel, because we're doing it from overseas, and they're doing it from Israel. So whatever happens, at the moment that the word Israel appears in one of the newspapers, it doesn't matter in what language and in what place in the world, there's immediate response to this. In this way or another. And it's mainly today through Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. One of the guys who is running this is Corey, who is standing there. As a result of it, like 70 to 75% of World Jewish Congress staff today are people in their 20s and 30s who know this media, who know how to reach people and how to get there. So my answer to my colleague here, I think it's a combination of diplomacy, of kind of old-style diplomacy, based on personal relations, based on what Ron said, in different international institutions, and public diplomacy that all of us are engaged in. So this one thing. I think just to finish also with your story, you know, a few days ago I hosted at the house of our president, Antonio Guterres. And he told me, in Portugal, anti-Semitism is something that cannot happen. We said, why? So he said, because nobody in Portugal does know what percentage of Jewish blood he or she have, because of the population composition of the Portugal. So a few days ago, I saw your ambassador in where was it? In Prague, I think. And he told me he comes from the city of Shargorod. And he said, it's a very nice village, and I went, and people, when I'm walking the streets, people are telling me that, it was here was the synagogue, and there was a synagogue. And I told them exactly the same. Shargorod used to be like 95% Jewish at the time. And I think that between the Ukrainian people and the Jewish people, you never know what percentage of whose blood is in whose VN. So from this point of view, I think that you have you rightly said that I think that whoever invented this conference did the right thing, because there are many things that Ukraine can learn from the Israeli experience. But I would say also the other way around. I think there are many things that the Israelis can learn from you.
Буде ще запитання? Я, можливо, переформулюю запитання, яке поставили з зали, і хотів би долучити наших якраз панелістів із України. Якщо держава, якщо уряд має приймати рішення, влада, яке збігатиметься з національними інтересами країни, якщо це була спецоперація, яка захищатиме інтереси українців, життя українців, і буде розуміння, що ця акція може спричинити до міжнародного скандалу, до небажаних наслідків на міжнародній арені в інформаційному плані. Як потрібно поводитися в таких ситуаціях? Я так розумію, це може бути не стільки про ту ситуацію, яка насталася навколо Бабченка, але от уроки на майбутнє. Бо очевидно, що і в історії Ізраїлю таке стається, і в історії України це ставатиметься, зважаючи насправді багато зацікавлених сторін, і роздмухувати проти України ті чи інші новини, і не лише вигадувати, так би мовити, фейкові факти, але й використовувати інколи слабкі сторони непродуманості тієї чи іншої акції в Україні.
It's actually a very good question. If somebody in the government asked us, myself and Natalia, we'd probably tell them don't do what you did with Babchenko, because I think I looked deeper into the case and I tried to understand the logic behind it. It's still very difficult for me to comprehend why there was a need for that. And I still haven't seen those who were actually found guilty and eventually convicted, because if we don't see them, then we don't really understand why it all happened, frankly speaking. And all the analyzing, all the media, international media, is actually fired back against Ukraine. Anyways, enough with that story. But you know, the problem with what we are facing today, I mean, we are in the fog of war, and fog of war is actually when there is lots of noise, and there is a great deal of disinformation which is orchestrated by our enemies, and then there is plenty of other information, and there is lots of confusion. There is very lack of understanding of what happened and what hasn't happened, what is true, what is not true, right? And as there was a previous discussion about human rights violations and the security, and this is a major debate, because how can you really secure human rights being observed at the times of war? Apparently there are some violations. But what if there are violations happening, especially in the times of the war zone? What does the government do, right? I think it's very simple. It's like in any public relations story. If there is something has happened and it doesn't look good, it's important to admit, apologize, and investigate. And it's important to be frank about it. It's important to admit the mistake, admit if there was a guilt, of course. If there was, for instance, a Ukrainian military has conducted crime, right? And you're trying to conceal that, it's not good. It's good to actually punish those who perpetrated it and actually admit it and communicate it, because this is how you build trust. Because in the world of communications, it's all about trust. Because now, for instance, if somebody is assassinated in Ukraine, God forbid, but it happens in Kyiv all the time, and there is an official statement about that, then the next question is, was he really assassinated? Maybe he's still alive, maybe not. So you see, I mean, it actually causes lots of confusion, and confusion is something we want to avoid, because you see the way Russian public diplomacy works. They're not trying to convince anybody about anything. They're just trying to confuse you and actually make it a matter of opinion. And I think this is something we really have to be aware of and communicate the truth, despite the fact how painful it can be. But if we admit it and actually communicate it, you will build trust.
I think on this particular issue, I think Ukraine is still learning as a country that, you know, trust is built on only in part on communicating, but a huge part of building trust is by your real achievements and by your real efforts and real actions. We all know that your actions will speak louder than your words. And I think we are still in the process of proving by our actions that what we are doing are, you know, the right course of action. I think in that particular case to which you referred in the question, I think maybe the state institutions have underestimated that their own credibility in the eyes of the international community is not enough yet, and that particular case might have a backlash in the perception of Ukraine and Ukraine's credibility, not among our enemies, but unfortunately including among our friends. And that's something that we would like to avoid, of course, because what Ukraine has earned in the past 4 years is something that is extremely precious, that is proving that we are building a democratic state here, and it's very paramount for the security of an entire region. This is what our soldiers do in the East. This is what the entire Ukrainian nation does by persevering, by staying, by working, by innovating and contributing to the economy in regardless of the war. And this is something very, very precious. But you don't build the ultimate trust or the ultimate great relations, in 4 short years. It takes time, and maybe along the line, operations like this and their creativity, will be congratulated by everyone. But we know that that particular operation, because it had many factors to it, it raised a lot of questions on our credibility. And I think that ultimately, it is very important for Ukraine to maintain and to continue to build its credibility, because it's so hard won.
Чи будуть ще запитання із зали?
Дякую. Дякую за чудові поради. Україна також стикається з такою проблемою, що ми намагаємося залучити інвестиції, залучити туристів, щоб більше туристів приїжджало в Україну, в той час як безпекова ситуація в Україні викликає занепокоєння в інших країнах. І дуже часто ми стикаємося з тим, що просто бояться їхати в Україну. Ізраїль живе з цією проблемою вже не одне, можна так сказати, десятиліття. Як ви будуєте свою комунікацію зі світом, щоб туристи не боялися приїжджати в Ізраїль?
I will translate this. Yes. The question was about how to attract investors, how to attract investments here, because lots of investors are scared by the war in the country. Israel is it stands for war as well, but it attracts investors. How and tourists as well. Yes. What is the secret to your success in your country?
First of all, it's a good question because it takes time, and the same way that you said very wisely that it takes time to really, let people understand that they can trust what the country does and what it says. So in the sense, you have to persuade people in the Ukraine the same way that we have to do it in Israel, that in contrast to what sometimes they hear or they see in the media, the situation on the ground is different. Now, it takes time to build that confidence, because what happens, it's gradual, because you say that, people don't really believe you completely. They come and visit, they go back, and they tell the story. And you basically, it doesn't happen from one day to the other. But it has to be very clear that the message or what you're giving is a trustworthy message. And it's, and sometimes this message is not good enough. People still are frightened, or people even on a higher level look for an alternative, okay? So you have to be attractive enough, and it takes time, and create that perception at least that what you're telling people has a base in reality. And it comes back to, the other debate on fake news, because exactly as the first speaker said, you're not trying to convince someone, but you're basically trying to, by fake news, trying to distort or put, questions. And the last example that I remember was the use of chemical weapons in Syria. The repetition of the fact that it wasn't Syria, it wasn't Atam, it must have been someone else. I remember people that I have huge respect for me that said it's not logical that they use chemical weapons, because they had no interest in doing it at the right timing, at that timing. And what I want to tell you is how hard it is to build this. Because you mentioned, how hard it is, because you have to persuade your own people in the Ukraine. They receive a lot. You would receive a lot of criticism on the way from the media on things that you know are not true, but you still have to treat it with a lot of patience in democratic structures, because only then will you be able to, and by the way, we still have huge debates if this is the right thing. Many in Israel think that we are paying too high a price for allowing the media to show only one angle. So the constant discussion is part of, I think, a culture that at the end of the road will make Ukraine very attractive.
I agree with Ron. I just would like to emphasize two things. Last week we had in Israel 2 marches. It was a gay parade in Tel Aviv with 20,000 people coming from all over the world. And like 40 minutes from there, on the border with Gaza, there was march of return with another 15 to 20,000 people who were sent by Hamas to the Israeli border. And there's no one single free room that you can find these days in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, partly because it's the year of 70th anniversary of the State of Israel, but you really can't get, a room. My colleague just was in Israel, had to go to sleep in some small hotel in Jaffa because there weren't rooms in Tel Aviv. So I think there are two things here. One, you rightly said so, one is the facts, and the other one is the perception. The facts about Ukraine are not well known, and this is something that you, as a government, as people who are responsible for issues of this kind, really have to bring it up. And the second one is the perception. The perception about Ukraine, you know, people don't understand where is Eastern Ukraine, where is Western Ukraine, where is Kiev, and what exactly is happening here. And once again, this goes back to what we discussed before. But my strong recommendation really would be to start with the Ukrainian diaspora. You have 20 million people, with Ukrainian families, who have friends. That's what was done in Israel for years. Most of the tourists coming to Israel were Jewish people living in diaspora. Today, there are really a minority of the tourists coming to Israel, and we have tourists from all over the place. And the other thing is, of course, tourist services that people can receive in Ukraine, because we have a beautiful city. I just flew here from Prague. You can't walk on the streets in Prague, and the same in Warsaw. It's completely full. And Kiev is a beautiful city, not less beautiful than Prague or Warsaw, and you don't have this number of tourists here. So I would say that A, perception, B, information, and C, the tourist services at a high level, like they succeeded to do it there.
But may I say another word? You're starting off in a good position because of lack of knowledge, you don't have a big minus. So your beginning stage is you can build, it's like, you know, terra incognita for a lot of people. Your base, you can build it very nicely. So you have the ingredients to really create an amazing base. You don't have to really fight a lot of headwinds, but just for people to know.
But just to add on this, I think that because of the war, actually, there was lots of media coverage, international media coverage, and now finally people understand that when Soviet Union collapsed, so many new countries have popped up, and Ukraine is an independent nation. So it really helped us to communicate that we're a sovereign state because of the situation. But your question was specific: how can you attract tourists at the times of war? And I think that last weekend, 2 weeks ago, when Kyiv hosted the finals of the Champions League, and I think this one event has really helped communicate that message, because all of a sudden, all those people who came, the massive media coverage, and a lot of people were watching it, when they saw it, they basically, okay, well, so there is a war there, but Kyiv is safe. Look, people are enjoying their time there. It is a European city, and it's safe to travel. There are other issues related to that, low-cost airlines. We need more of those to make it cheaper to travel to Ukraine. But also there are so many other sort of areas of tourism that could be explored. Pilgrimages, religious pilgrimages, from Israel for that matter, to Uman, to Medjugorje and other places which are sacred to a lot of Jewish people, as well as also pilgrimages of Swedes that go down to southern Ukraine to explore the villages where they used to live. Or green tourism. People want to live in clean environment somewhere in the Carpathians. Access to water. I'll give you another example. Israeli investor invested into a little town called Sataniv, which is in Khmelnytska Oblast, and Sataniv has unique access to water, which is similar to that water of Truskavets. But now they hope to bring more Israeli people for treatment to Sataniv. And recently, they've actually rebuilt the synagogue there. I was there last year, and I was surprised because I saw the synagogue totally like ruined, and all of a sudden it's a brand new synagogue. It was totally like rebuilt. And I said, are there any visitors? No, there are no visitors, but we hope to get some people just to come to recreation to Sataniv, and then they will actually come to the synagogue to see where their ancestors come from. So this is an interesting avenue, and I think even with respect to Israel, we can do so much more, right? because what we have is we have to take advantage of it. But apparently it's going to take time. But I think it's all about events, and people can travel and actually explore for themselves. You know, the feedback that I got from, recently I was involved into this German Marshall Fund. They did a seminar here in Kiev a couple of weeks ago, and they brought people from the US and Europe. And a lot of people, even from Eastern Europe, like there was a friend from Serbia, he said, oh, my expectations of Kiev were very low. I'm very surprised that it's such a modern European city. And I was, you know, for me it was a surprise that actually a Serbian person is saying that, because I would expect from the Balkans to know more about Ukraine than any Western European. But apparently, you know, this is going to take time. And I think we need to build that critical mass. And once we get more people visit Ukraine, more will come.
Дуже дякую. Чи будуть ще запитання?
If I could just add maybe on a comment before that question is posed. I think it's also, you know, the 5 million Ukrainians who obtained, who traveled abroad ever since we have the visa-free regime with the EU. I think it's also on the side of the Ukrainians. You know, if every Ukrainian feels that he or she is an ambassador of Ukraine in a true sense, because that's the way it is. All of us are, in a sense, ambassadors of Ukraine. If we travel abroad, if we spread the word more about our country that is managing to truly, you know, defend its borders on the east, but at the same time to have these wonderful events like Eurovision Song Contest last year and the football championship and other things. In 2 weeks, Lviv, my hometown, is going to be a mecca of people traveling from all over the world for the Alpha Jazz Festival, which is, you know, brought by Friedman, right? Another sort of a Lviv native who is developing his business in all different countries of the world. And this is something where you will see many people traveling from abroad to come to Lviv specifically for that. And I think the more they tell this, you know, the more they tell the story, the better for Ukraine, definitely.
Ну, на підтримку всього, що було сказано спікерами, можу згадати опитування, яке ми організовували минулого року під час Євробачення в Києві. І гості іноземні, які були в Києві, ми їх запитували, якої були вони думки про Україну. Якої думки вони були про Україну до того, як приїхали. Більшість з них сказали, що Україна асоціювалася з війною, небезпечною країною, до якої ліпше не їхати. Тобто було ризиковано їхати. Але коли запитали у них уже остаточно, який підсумок і враження, то вони зізналися, 92% захотіли повернутися до України. І для більшості Україна вже асоціювалася з гостинністю, чудовими, позитивними людьми. Тому те, що ми зараз говоримо на рівні теорії, воно справді працює. Будь ласка, запитання. Я боюсь, що це будуть останні запитання. Будь ласка.
Віктор Ткачук, перш за все, дякую за ваш візит. Це, без сумніву, комплімент для нас. Ми живемо в таких звичайних умовах, які називаються три реальності. В одній реальності живе влада, яка 24 години зайнята тим, щоб утриматися при владі. У нас є своя преса, яка здебільшого, з усією повагою до неї, звичайно, нагадує таку маленьку собачку, яка повинна голосно гавкати.
Я дуже перепрошую, можна запитання, тому що на коментарі нема часу.
Повинна голосно гавкати, але не вкусити. І в нас є народ, який займається туризмом в країні, яка воює від Шаргорода до столиці. Якщо повернутися до самих початків нашої панелі, що би ви порадили українським дипломатам, яку з трьох реальностей представляти за кордоном?
Ще одне запитання, будь ласка.
Дякую. Мене звати Ярослав Олійник, представляю компанію по візуалізації архітектурної. У мене питання до Роберта Сінгера є. Ви якось у вашій доповіді розповідали про компанії, які... У вас є компанії, які діють у Твіттері та Фейсбуку. Чи можна дізнатись назву цієї компанії, якщо така є? Дякую.
Шановні спікери, панелісти, як захід добігає кінця, я б хотів до всіх вас звернутися, щоб ви сказали свої завершальні ремарки, буквально на 30 секунд. Можливо, щоб узагальнити запитання, які пролунали, які будуть справді поради українським дипломатам, як вони мають представляти свою країну за кордоном, враховуючи в тому числі те, що ми сьогодні говорили в контексті ізраїльського досвіду. Ну і до пана Сінгера було більш конкретне питання щодо агенцій, які працюють в соціальних мережах. Дуже дякую. Василю, можливо, почнемо із вас.
I already said a lot, but there was a good question on the recommendations. Of course, it was more a question to our Israeli friends, and I look forward to hearing your recommendations and your advice. But I think because I never worked, I was never a civil servant. I was mostly always an activist and businessman. But I do encounter Ukrainian embassies a lot, and more often, actually, I'm very disappointed, frankly speaking, for many different reasons. I mean, we can, of course, debate and discuss it, but I really, because you see the Ukraine's foreign service is very militarized in that respect. There is a very, the hierarchy there is so strong, and people are so scared and intimidated by actually doing anything, initiating anything, and they just choose not to do anything. And then actually it's very dangerous because nothing is happening. And a lot of that is the reason of this old Soviet system, right, of the civil service, especially the foreign service. Because if you look at all the ministries after the revolution of dignity, you would see that MFA is still lagging behind in terms of their reform and in terms of actually introducing new tools to their diplomacy. I mean, and I'm just being frank here. We can, of course, discuss it, but I'm not here to criticize them. They're, of course, doing a great job, but look, it could be better. I mean, it's all individual. There are some great people there, but apparently it could be improved. There could be more motivation and more sort of forward-looking approach to many different things.
I thank you for this question. I think it's a really good question. In general, I think that Ukrainian diplomats need to pursue diplomacy that would ensure that we have a sovereign state and a very globally competitive state, 21st century globally competitive state. So whatever they do, they have to live up to that expectation from the Ukrainian nation. I think that we have some embassies that are problematic still. I love seeing the work of some of the diplomats that have been already assigned their jobs since Revolution of Dignity. In particular, I think we have really good diplomats in Austria, and I think we have really good representation in the Council of Europe, and we see more creativity in the Ukrainian diplomacy. I would agree with Vasil that before, for various reasons, Ukrainian diplomacy was about being polite. Now it's about becoming a little bit more effective and creative. And I think we need to see more of that. However, I think the success of a country like ours, and maybe any country, can only come if our state diplomacy is going to always combine its efforts with the diaspora and with the civil society. Because when we are together, we're much stronger. And given the level of threats that Ukraine has, we need to do everything and anything possible to make sure that our coordination is really, really good. So there have been some cases where, as a representative of civil society, I can say that we lacked that coordination with the state. But there were some cases, like in some moments of our campaign in the Netherlands, where actually there was a full coordination between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the ambassador, like 10 organizations from Ukraine, students from the Academy of Leadership. Everyone was in sync in terms of the messages, what do we do and how do we do it to achieve one single result for the state. And I think we need to do more of that. And also including in the very important organizations like the United Nations, because this is where we do look up to Israel's example. But at the same time, we had the experience of when Putin spoke at the UN, Our official delegation did have to be in the main hall and to be there and to represent Ukraine on a state level, but it didn't prevent myself and a few other colleagues from UCMC and Parliament and one diplomat who went up on the balcony and protested against Putin's speech in the UN with the flag of Ilovaisk. You know, so when there is a synchronization, you can achieve much more in terms of the goals you're trying to get for the country.
Yeah, no, I fully agree that the answer is not simple. It's probably the answer is the combination of the traditional diplomacy through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or any other government ministries, through the efforts of diaspora, and I'll speak a little bit more about this. Social media, the third sector, the NGO world, and the civil society. Now, no doubt about this. Now, I cannot speak about the Ukrainian diplomatic corps. Maybe Ron knows more people and can speak more about this. But those diplomats that I met were solely focusing on the war on the east of Ukraine. This is the only focus of the discussions they usually have. And I think this should be shifted. If you have any way to influence it, I think this would be a good example. Now, people ask me, well, what is the best part of my job? The best part of my job is that I'm traveling the world all the time. Jews live in some 2,000 cities worldwide, maybe a little bit more. In every place I come to, I have somebody to have dinner with. So I just arrived here yesterday. I already have a dinner with the people here from the Jewish community. They know the situation on the ground much better than I do. They know it in Ukraine, they know it in Brazil, they know it in Argentina, they know it in every place. Not only this, but they're obviously much more connected than I am, because they live in this country. Usually these are successful people in their own societies. I see, as I said, I see people of Ukrainian descent in different places I'm traveling to, really in Latin America, in Europe, in North America, in different places. I think for what you're trying to achieve, for image building, brand building, perception building, I think to use people who have affiliation, connection, or history with Ukraine is critical. I think social media is a key factor. First of all, in Ukrainian, for the 40 million people who live here, and this you have to be more engaged in the Ukrainian language. I just asked our unit that already working in some 20 languages to do it in Ukrainian as well. But obviously, if you want the world outside to know, you have to do it in many languages. As I said, we are working in 20 languages as a World Jewish Congress. I'm sure that the Foreign Ministry probably is working in many other languages. But I think this is critical. And from this point of view, we have offices in more than 100 countries worldwide because we have the representatives of the communities. So I don't need to have an office in Kiev, because when I'm coming to Kiev, the local people who are representing the Jewish community in Ukraine are fixing all the meetings for me, including, from meeting me at the hotel till the moment that I leave Kiev. So I think that this has to be built much better than the Ukrainian diaspora has today. And the government should see it as, I don't want to say a strategic asset, but definitely as a bridge to the worldwide opinion makers.
So before I give advice, I want to tell you that Israel, from the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 till 1977, had only one party, the Labour Party, ruling the country. They nominated anyone they wanted. They did, and what I'm trying to tell you is that, before giving advice, I want to tell you that the structures are very important, to create structures. So what you have today on the diplomatic side, you have people like me who enter the foreign ministry through exams. I entered at the lowest form of animal life, second secretary. And the people that are entering, the level then continue, but also the government is allowed to have political nominations. Hence, the prime minister or the foreign minister says, X or Y, I want him in a certain key position, and we have 11 political nominations. Why 11? Kacha. Okay? I'm teaching you but The structures are important. Now, what is a good diplomat? A good diplomat is someone who can tell you to go to hell in a way that you will be looking forward for the trip. Okay? Now, the issue of the diplomatic in today, the diplomatic world, I did something when I headed Israel's Foreign Service and continued. It's important to brand a country. Brand a country. Think when I talk to you and I say France, you think romance. Italy, you laugh and you think of food. The Germans, you think, so you have, and basically it took a lot of work for Israel to brand Israel as a country. We had a lot of things that we could brand. You know, the history, you know, the old city, the religion. Israel branded itself as a startup nation, okay? You have to think and do a lot of work internally how to brand the Ukraine. So people would say, aha, Ukraine? Mm-hmm. Now, then all your systems, okay, work in a very organized fashion to really implement this brand. I don't want to bore you by telling you what an ambassador or a diplomat does, but in essence, he should cover the economic, cultural, social issues of his country and focus on missions that are important to do. But if I had to zoom out and tell you, do a lot of work with people from the outside and professionals to brand the Ukraine. And you'll see in those discussions, internal discussions, people shout, people cry, people I don't know what, but at the end of the day, it will create what you want on the public domain and in the world.
Пропоную брендувати і бути українцем як гостинному народові. І пропоную і запрошую всіх до кави брейк. Всім неймовірно дякую за участь у нинішній сесії. Сподіваюсь, вона для всіх була корисною. Дуже дякую, до нових зустрічей.